It's what's on the inside that counts for Infiniti's mid-size three-row crossover. I'm Jay, and this is Modern Motoring. Welcome to the 2025 Infiniti QX60 video. In this video, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to talk about what's new for 2025, and we're going to go through the competitors. Most of the QX60 stays the same from 2024, but let's get straight into it. The big news is they are using a new to the QX60 engine, and simply put, they're doing it for emissions compliances. So gone is the old 3.5 liter V6 that used to put out 295 horsepower, 270 pound-feet of torque through a 9-speed automatic transmission. And here we have a 2-liter 4-cylinder VC turbo engine putting out 268 horsepower and 286 pound-feet of torque. Thankfully, they kept the 9-speed automatic instead of going to a CVT. And for differences, you lose 27 horsepower, but you gain 16 pound-feet of torque. And there's another key difference, I'll just get into it right now, and that's with the fuel consumption. And it's lower here at 10 liters per 100 kilometers combined versus 10.7. But here you have a 70-liter fuel tank, whereas in the 2024 model, with the 3.5 liter V6, you had a 74-liter fuel tank. There is a tiny difference on the distance you can go on a full tank of fuel with 2025 versus 2024. 2025, you can go about 700 kilometers because it's 10 liters per 100 kilometers combined on a 70-liter fuel tank. And 2024, it was 10.7 combined, again with a 74-liter fuel tank, meaning you could go 691 kilometers. So a 9-kilometer difference. So I think Infiniti tried to keep things as consistent as possible with the change to the 2-liter VC turbo. Now the QX50 and QX55 use the 2-liter VC turbo, as does the all-new generation of Murano. Slightly different output numbers, but the base 2-liter VC turbo engine is the same. For towing, you can still tow up to 6,000 pounds trim dependent. The top 2 trims get it through a transmission oil cooler, and on the Infiniti Canada website, your lower 3 trims can tow up to 3,500 pounds. The Nissan Pathfinder, as well as the Nissan Frontier, also use a 3.5 liter V6. So I'm wondering, with these new emission standards that Infiniti had to comply with, if that's going to make its way to the Pathfinder, which I'm pretty sure it will. Pathfinder is very close to the Infiniti as far as size and footprint goes. And I can't see the Pathfinder being able to keep that 3.5 liter V6 as well. They say there's no replacement for displacement, and part of me feels that way here. Nothing was wrong with the 3.5 V6, and they got up to speed fairly quickly. Here in the 2-liter VC turbo, I feel it takes a little longer to get up to highway speed. You know, not much, maybe a half second, full second. And the same thing on city streets as you shuffle up and down those 9 gears. I just find there's a little bit of a lag, a little bit of a delay. I don't think many people will notice, and I don't think it's going to harm the QX60 sales. VC turbo engine is a pretty impressive engine. It's still a quiet ride. It's still a very smooth ride. But I just noticed there's a little bit of a delay in getting up to highway speeds and going off the line from a dead stop to whatever city speed you're getting to. I feel part of the reason why it feels a little sluggish is you've lost 27 horsepower. And yes, you've gained 16 pound-feet of torque, which is the more important figure, because that's what gets you up to speed. I feel they could have gone a little higher, maybe if they matched it at 286. Now, I know that the compliance side has to kick in for fuel consumption and emissions. So, you know, maybe this was the most they could go, or maybe there's an update coming in the next couple of years. But only being able to bump it up 16 pound-feet of torque is a bit of a contributing factor here. The other thing that's new for 2025 is the Black Edition, and a lot of manufacturers are doing this. So here's what Infiniti has done with their Black Edition for the QX60. There are gloss black 20-inch wheels. There are gloss black roof rails. The logos and badging on the rear are also blacked out. You have an illuminated front logo, which I think is a pretty cool move. And it's not the first Infiniti to have this, but I think it looks really sharp and just highlights that attention to detail. Now, on the inside, you have a black headliner, and you also have a brand new key fob. As for the rest of the QX60 for 2025, everything else is the same on the inside. You have a fully digital instrument cluster. You have your large infotainment screen. A little gripe I have about that is Apple CarPlay does not take up the full screen, and there's not an option for it to do so either. It's cut in not quite half, I'd say maybe 65–70% of the screen is Apple CarPlay. You still have your capacitive touch buttons. Seats are really, really comfortable. You can see this one has the large panoramic sunroof. Everything else is exactly as you'd remember it from the 2024 model, and it's a nice, quiet, and very comfortable interior. And this one also has the upgraded 17-speaker Bose audio system. Sounds absolutely fantastic. And I think Infinity's got it right as far as the simple side of being a luxury vehicle, and some of them have a lot of overly designed bits and pieces, and there's just too much happening. So I like how Infiniti has kept the changes to just the engine and not messed around with the inside. Let's go through pricing and competition. So there are now 5 trims for the QX60, with the Black Edition slotting right in the middle. So this is all MSRP and in Canadian figures for all the numbers I'm about to say. So the pure trim comes in at $63,450. This specific Black Edition comes in at $66,645, and the top trim autograph, $72,845. And as a reminder, 268 horsepower, 286 pound-feet of torque through a 2-liter 4-cylinder VC turbo and a 9-speed automatic. Acura MDX uses a 3.5-liter V6. Their power figures are 290 horsepower, 267 pound-feet of torque. They use a 10-speed automatic transmission, and their prices for the low end, which is the Tech, come in at $66,880, and the top trim Platinum Elite A-Spec runs $74,880. Now, there is that Type S, which is almost $100,000 Canadian, which is just wild, but you get a lot more performance out of it. But I kept that out of it because it's not really reflective of what we have here. Next up is the Buick Enclave. Power comes from a 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, 328 horsepower, 326 pound-feet of torque, all through an 8-speed automatic transmission. The preferred trim comes in at $57,999, which is your base trim, and your top trim Avenir comes in at $67,999. Next up is the Lexus 350, not the hybrid, not the 500 hybrid, just the straight 350 gasoline engine, and that is a 2.4-liter Turbo 4, 275 horsepower, 317 pound-feet of torque, and that goes through Lexus's 8-speed automatic transmission. There's one trim, which is the RX itself, for $59,850. So it starts a touch lower than the QX60 here, but there's a bunch of packages you can get from a few thousand all the way up to over $15,000, I believe, for the F Sport 3 package. So it depends on how you want to dress it up, but just comparing apples to apples with the base MSRP, it's pretty close to the pure trim here in the QX60. Next up is the Mazda CX-90, and it's not a direct competitor, but Mazda's not mainstream, Mazda's not luxury. They're kind of sitting in the middle in that premium segment. Power comes through a 3.3-liter turbocharged 6-cylinder engine. You can get it 2 different ways. You can get the base engine, which is 280 horse, 332 pound-feet of torque, or you can pay a little bit more and get the higher tuned engine with 340 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. And regardless of what engine you pick, it comes through an 8-speed automatic transmission. Pricing for the base engine, because it's closest to this for the Mazda CX-90, $45,900 for the GS, $57,550 for the GSL, which is your second trim, and the mid trim for the whole lineup, but the top trim for the lowered output engine is the GT at $55,350. Finally, the Cadillac XT6 runs up a 3.6-liter V6 or a 2.0-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. The luxury trim, which is your base trim, gets the 2-liter Turbo 4. Power for that is 237 and 258 for horsepower and torque. So definitely lower than what we have here in the QX60. But with the premium luxury or the sport trim, which are the same price, which I'll get to in a minute, power output for that comes at 310 and 271. Pricing for the XT6 for the luxury base, $62,099. But if you do want that 3.6-liter V6 with a higher output, again, premium luxury and sport have the same price, and that's $67,499. So there are your 5 key competitors to the QX60, and I think the Lexus RX probably sits the closest to it. But if you are in the market for a 3-row luxury / premium with the Mazda CX-90 being included in there, crossover, these are the ones you should be looking at. I think that the engine change, although it was mandatory, it was well done by Infiniti. I would have liked to have seen a little more power out of the QX60, but when you're bound by the emission regulations, I think Infiniti did the best they possibly could, given the constraints and parameters that they actually had to work with. For 2025, Infiniti's 4 models, the 50, 55, 60, and 80, are gasoline only. But over on the Nissan side, they've got a pretty lofty goal of having 34, I believe, different electrification options throughout the lineup by 2030. We're in 2024 now, soon to be 2025, and it's bound to find its way into the Infiniti lineup. No rumors, no speculation on what that will be or what models they will be, but I'm 99% sure there'll be something electrified from Infiniti in the next couple of years. So that's going to wrap it up for the 2025 Infiniti QX60. If you have any questions on the vehicle, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to get you answers as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching. I truly do appreciate the support, and I invite you to join our social media community. We are on all of the major platforms. So with that, thank you again for watching. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.